You've arrived at CozySideAudio, where dreams begin with a story. Whether you're studying, journaling, or just chilling, this one's for you. If you vibe with this kind of content, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe for more.
CozySideAudio presents Mirrors of Manhattan. Chapter 1. The Broken Watch. The body had already been zipped into a black bag by the time William Cross arrived, but that didn't stop him from crouching beside it and unzipping the flap anyway. "Excuse me. Hey." One of the uniformed officers lunged forward. "That's a crime scene, sir. You can't just—" "Relax." William's tone was crisp, not unkind, but carried the air of someone used to being obeyed. He tugged the zipper down with one hand, tilting his head at the face within. The skin had gone waxy pale, the features slackened into an almost peaceful mask. Only the unnatural angle of the neck and the faint trace of blood at the temple spoiled the illusion of sleep. "Fell from up there," William murmured, glancing up. His eyes tracked the glass facade of the skyscraper towering overhead, all steel ribs and mirrored panes glinting the last scraps of sunset. The 57th floor had a terrace, cordoned now with yellow tape that fluttered like warning flags in the evening breeze. "Straight down to the plaza, impact velocity, roughly 70 miles per hour. The officer grimaced. "You some kind of morbid tourist?" "Consulting detective," William corrected, brushing dust from the lapel of his coat as if that were his badge of authority. "NYPD sometimes tolerates me, other times less so. Which will it be tonight?" "Depends who you ask," came a voice from behind him. Detective Marcus Doyle was built like the Brooklyn brownstone he lived in, broad-shouldered, weathered, steady as brickwork. He had the kind of jaw that clenched automatically whenever William entered a room. He approached now, trench coat swinging, irritation practically radiating off him. "Cross, I should have known." Doyle jerked his head toward the corpse. "You unzipped him." "He wasn't breathing, Detective." William smiled faintly. "I checked." Doyle swore under his breath and waved the uniforms back. "Fine. Since you're here, make yourself useful. What do you see?" William crouched again, leaning close but never touching. He absorbed everything in a sweep of the eyes, the scuffs on the Italian leather shoes, the faint aroma of cedarwood cologne, the blood pooled at the nostril. Then, delicately, he picked up a fragment lying inches from the corpse, a pocket watch, shattered, its hands frozen at 8:17. "Curious," William said softly. "Why would a man with a wristwatch in plain view also carry a pocket watch? And why is this one smashed to pieces when the fall was cushioned by his body? Maybe he dropped it first." Maybe." William stood, gaze flicking to the plaza's polished stone tiles. "But the angle of shatter suggests it struck something metal. Steel, most likely. An elevator shaft, perhaps, before the body ever left the building." Doyle stared. "You're saying he didn't fall?" "Oh, he fell," William said. "But not the way you think." Lauren Whitaker hadn't meant to end up there. She'd been chasing a different story. Something about city permits and real estate scandals in Midtown when she saw the crowd clustered at the base of the glass tower. A reporter's instinct was a magnetic pull, and before she knew it, she was flashing her half-battered press badge and elbowing past barricades. Now she lingered at the fringe, notebook in hand, trying to look like she belonged. William Cross caught her eye instantly. Everyone else saw a lanky man in a charcoal coat, tie askew, hair perpetually windswept as if he'd just stepped off the subway at rush hour. Lauren saw intensity, the kind that carved grooves at the corners of his mouth and lit his gaze like tungsten filament. He was speaking quickly, gesturing toward the building with precise fingers. Doyle looked half an inch from strangling him. Lauren edged closer. She'd heard rumors about William Cross. the eccentric who solves cases the NYPD can't crack, the one who sees things other people miss. She hadn't expected him to be here, or to be this magnetic. Timed elevators, William was saying, pacing now. The victim enters alone, doors shut. Somewhere between floors, the system halts, doors open, and he mimed a shove. Out he goes. From the terrace, the fall looks natural. Suicide. But in reality, our victim never made it there of his own accord. Doyle rubbed his temples. You've been here 10 minutes, Cross. You think you've solved it already? Not solved, merely pointed in the correct direction. William knelt suddenly, eyes narrowing at a faint smear on the tiles near the corpse. He swiped a gloved fingertip across it and sniffed. Lubricant oil, industrial grade, not from his shoes. Which means, Doyle demanded. William straightened, pocketing the fragment of watch. Which means our killer was sloppy, and still inside the building. The skyscraper's lobby was an ocean of marble and glass, its vaulted ceiling swallowing echoes. Uniforms milled about, trying not to look like they'd lost control of the crime scene. William walked as if he owned the place, every detail sinking into him, the security desk's fingerprint scanner, the elevator banks with their brushed steel doors, the faint draft sneaking in from a side corridor. Lauren followed, almost tripping over herself. Sorry, hi, I'm Lauren Whitaker, Brooklyn Ledger. William shot her a sidelong glance, then immediately looked away, already disinterested. Local press. I read it. Your editor can't afford good coffee, and it shows. Lauren blinked. Excuse me? You chew your pen caps. Ink stain on your thumb proves it. Suggests nerves, deadlines. Your shoes. Cheap leather, but worn evenly. You walk everywhere, no car. Suggests dedication and desperation. He turned sharply, coat flaring. So, Miss Whitaker, are you following me for a story, or because you're curious which of us dies first? She flushed, mouth opening and closing. Both. For the first time, William's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Honest, refreshing. Doyle caught up with them, grumbling. Cross, I swear to God, don't drag the press into this. Last thing I need is a reporter shadowing your every insane deduction. But William was already studying the elevators. He pressed his palm flat against the brushed metal, leaning close. Listen, you can hear the change in pitch when the car stops between floors. Doyle scowled. So the system's been tampered with. William tapped the panel. Someone overrode the programming, staged a halt at the 57th floor, opened the doors, then shoved him out, Lauren said quietly, connecting the dots. William snapped his fingers. Exactly. He pointed at her, as if she were a student who'd answered correctly. Finally, someone paying attention. Doyle muttered something unprintable. By the time the building's security chief arrived, a harried man in a crumpled suit, William had already talked his way past 3 technicians and commandeered a maintenance tablet. Lines of code spilled across the screen, a log of elevator operations. See, William jabbed at a timestamp. 8:17, the moment our victim fell. But here, notice the delay command. Manual override. Someone forced the doors open remotely. Doyle leaned over his shoulder. You can read this crap. Fluently. William's eyes glittered. And better than that, I can tell you exactly which terminal issued the command, which means our killer is either a very stupid hacker or standing in this building with us, right now. A hush fell. Even Doyle looked rattled. Lauren scribbled furiously, pulse hammering. She knew a good story when she heard one, and this was more than good. It was dangerous. They found the first real clue in the victim's office on the 57th floor. It was sleek, sterile. Walls of glass, desk polished to a mirror shine. a man who measured his life in stock tickers and martini lunches. William scanned the shelves, the desk, the floor, absorbing in seconds what others would have needed hours to catalogue. His gaze snagged on a single oddity, a glass paperweight shaped like a prism, positioned dead center on the desk blotter. He lifted it, tilting it in the light. A hairline etching ran across one facet, barely visible unless you caught it at the right angle. A curve, a flourish, almost like an artist's signature. William's expression darkened. "What is it?" Lauren asked softly. He slipped the prism into an evidence bag, his voice low. "A calling card. One I've seen before?" Doyle frowned. "From who?" William looked past him, out the vast window where Manhattan sprawled like a restless machine of lights. His reflection stared back at him in the glass, fractured and doubled. "The artisan," he said at last. Lauren didn't understand the weight of the name. Not yet. But she saw it in William's face. A flicker of recognition, of something like dread carefully buried under wit and arrogance. For the first time since she'd arrived, William Cross looked less like a man in control of the game and more like a player who'd just realized the board was rigged. And Lauren Whitaker, reporter, knew she'd just stumbled into the kind of story that could either make her career or end it. Chapter 2. Smoke Mirrors. The Navy Yard smelled of ash and seawater, a bitter perfume that clung to the air long after the last flames had been smothered. Floodlights mounted on tripods glared against the dark, throwing sharp shadows across the blackened skeleton of the warehouse. Fire hoses lay coiled like exhausted serpents, water still seeping into gutters that led out to the East River. William Cross stood just beyond the tape, collar turned up against the chill, studying the ruins as if they'd whispered something only he could hear. "Official report says arson for the insurance," Doyle muttered beside him. His voice was thick with skepticism and cigarette smoke, though he hadn't lit one. He never did on duty, just kept the pack in his pocket like a promise he didn't want to cash in. Owners screaming about sabotage, but frankly, it's textbook. Accelerant traces everywhere. Matches an insurance payout big enough to buy him a summer house in Montauk. And yet, William stepped under the tape without asking, shoes crunching over charred debris. "It's never textbook, detective. If it were, you wouldn't have called me." "I didn't call you," Doyle shot back. "I specifically told my sergeant not to." Then, fate has a sense of humor. William flashed a smile, though his eyes stayed fixed on the gutted building. "And we mustn't argue with fate." Lauren Whitaker trailed after them, notebook tucked under her arm, wide-eyed at the scene. She hadn't officially been invited either, but William had waved her along as though she'd been deputized. Doyle had glared but said nothing. "Do you always just walk onto active crime scenes like this?" she whispered. William crouched low, fingers brushing a shard of charred wood, turning it delicately. "Only when they're interesting, and this one is very interesting indeed." Lauren jotted a note, then hesitated. "Why?" "Because fire is nature's best liar." He held up the blackened shard, eyes glittering in the floodlight. "It devours evidence, obscures truth. A convenient mask for whoever wishes to hide their sins." Doyle sighed. "He does this. Starts monologuing." "I'm not monologuing. I'm thinking aloud." William rose abruptly and strode deeper into the ruins. "Difference is important." Inside the warehouse, the air was heavier, the smoke residue clinging to their throats. Steel girders jutted like ribs of a carcass, warped by heat. William moved with the restless energy of a chess player surveying the board, gaze darting from floor to ceiling to wall. "Notice the burn patterns," he murmured, half to himself, half to anyone listening. Fire moved inward from the walls, not outward from a central point. Unusual. Lauren frowned. Wouldn't that mean it didn't start here? Correct. It suggests multiple ignition points, which complicates the insurance fraud theory. Too much effort for a simple payout. Doyle followed grudgingly, boots squelching in the wet ash. So what's your alternative? William stopped at a corner of the warehouse where the fire had burned hottest. The concrete spalled from extreme heat. He knelt, brushing away debris until his fingers found something half buried. A warped metal container, lid blown open. He held it up. Even under soot, the stenciled letters were visible. USDA export inspection. Lauren leaned closer. That's food regulation? Or contraband masquerading as it, William said, his gaze sharpened. Smuggling, likely perishables, illegal imports, or worse. And this fire, he tapped the container, wasn't to collect an insurance check. It was to erase whatever was stored here. Doyle swore. You're telling me someone torched a $500,000 warehouse to cover their tracks? William smiled faintly. Someone very thorough, or very desperate. They searched deeper, flashlights cutting through smoke haze. Lauren's pen scratched furiously across her notebook, trying to keep up. William paused at a collapsed shelving unit, shining his light across the blackened metal. The beams had twisted inward, like something had exploded at their base. He crouched, fingers finding a scattering of glass fragments embedded in the ash. He picked one up, held it against the light. It caught the beam and refracted it, casting a faint prism on the scorched floor. Lauren saw his expression tighten. Another artisan clue? He didn't answer immediately, just slipped the shard into an evidence bag. Cross, Doyle pressed. Don't dance around it. Is this that phantom you're obsessed with again? The artisan. William's jaw flexed, but his voice was calm. If you'd seen what I've seen, you'd be obsessed too. Doyle growled. Damn it, William. I need facts, not ghost stories. Then here's a fact. William swept his flashlight across the wreckage. The fire wasn't about money. It was about silence. And whoever set it wanted us to believe otherwise. The silence broke with the sound of glass crunching under a new set of footsteps. Detective Doyle. A firefighter in heavy gear jogged up, face streaked with soot. We found something by the river exit. They followed him through a side corridor that reeked of gasoline. At the far end, where the wall had partially collapsed, a steel door hung off its hinges. Beyond it, the dock stretched out toward the East River, slick with mist. There, at the edge, sat a truck. Or what was left of one. Its cab had been gutted by fire, tires melted, license plates charred beyond recognition. William circled it slowly, eyes tracing every melted contour. Delivery vehicle, parked for quick escape, but they torched it too. Lawrence scribbled. Why burn the getaway car? Because it wasn't a getaway car. William crouched, brushing away ash until he revealed faint lettering scorched into the metal side panel. Shipping company. They were moving something. The warehouse was merely a waypoint. Doyle peered. Something valuable enough to risk all this? William stood, coat flaring in the breeze. Valuable enough to kill for, and judging by the artisan's signature. He glanced at the prism shard in his evidence bag. Valuable enough for him to take personal interest. It should have ended there, with theories and burned-out leads. But the warehouse still had one secret left. Lauren spotted it first. A faint light flickering beneath the collapsed stairwell. Not fire, something smaller, steadier. She pointed. There. William was already moving. He ducked under twisted beams, ignoring Doyle's shouted warning, and found a space carved beneath the rubble. A storage closet, half intact. Inside, shielded from the worst of the flames, was a locked steel briefcase. The light came from a digital timer set into its surface, numbers ticking downward. "Cross," Doyle barked, shoving past him. "Get away from it." But William was already kneeling, studying the device with clinical calm. Not explosive, power source too small, likely a timed incinerator charge, designed to ignite and destroy contents when timer hits 0. "How long?" Lauren asked, breathless. William glanced. 47 seconds. The three of them stared at the case, ash swirling in the floodlight beam. "Options?" Doyle demanded. William's mind was a rapid-fire machine, gears whirring. He traced the seam, found the locking mechanism. Combination lock, electronic override. His fingers danced across the keypad, but too slow. Whoever designed this wanted no survivors, not even documents. 30 seconds, Lauren whispered. William's jaw clenched. Then, without warning, he yanked off his coat, wrapped it around the case, and hauled it into his arms. "Cross, what the hell?" "Back," William shouted, sprinting for the dock. Doyle and Lauren bolted after him. 20 seconds. He reached the edge, muscles straining, and hurled the wrapped case into the East River. It vanished with a splash. 3 seconds later, a muffled whoomp vibrated through the water, sending up a plume of bubbles. Then silence. The three of them stood gasping in the mist, the city lights smeared across the river like molten gold. Doyle broke it first, voice low. "You're insane." William bent, catching his breath, then straightened with a faint smile. Possibly, but alive. Lauren was scribbling so fast she nearly tore the page. Her hands shook, but her eyes were bright. That was incredible. William glanced at her, then away. "Don't romanticize it, Miss Whitaker. All we did was lose whatever answers were in that case." "But we know more than before," she pressed. "We know the fire wasn't random. We know the artisans involved." William's smile faded. He turned back to the black water, where ripples slowly faded into nothing. "Yes," he said quietly, "and that's exactly what worries me." Back at the edge of the ruin, Doyle lit his first cigarette in months. The flame flared, then steadied. "Cross," he said, exhaling smoke into the cold night. "I don't know what the hell you're chasing, but if this artisan is real, we're in deeper than any of us can handle." William said nothing. His eyes were still on the river, on the place where the case had vanished. In the reflection of the floodlights, the water looked like broken glass. And in that glass, William Cross thought he almost saw a face looking back. Chapter 3. The Locked Cafe. The morning air in the Lower East Side smelled of bagels, exhaust, and rain-wet brick. William Cross stood outside a shuttered cafe called Velvet Ground, his gloved hands tucked into his coat pockets, his sharp gray eyes narrowing at the police tape fluttering lazily across the doorway. The sign in the window was hand-painted in bold, looping script, the kind of lettering that suggested mismatched mugs and playlists full of indie guitar ballads. The cafe was a neighborhood hub for poets, art students, and people who claimed to work on novels but mostly refreshed Twitter. It was also, according to Detective Marcus Doyle, the scene of a break-in no one could quite explain. Lauren Whitaker trailed beside William, juggling a steaming paper cup of coffee and a battered leather notebook. She wasn't on official assignment from her editor this morning, but that hadn't stopped her. When William had called at dawn with a cryptic, "Locked door, no point of entry, come and watch," she'd pulled on jeans and sprinted across town. Detective Doyle, his trench coat perpetually wrinkled, met them on the sidewalk with a frown. "Cross," he muttered. "I thought you'd still be in bed after last night's finance stunt. Don't you people sleep?" "Not if there's a locked room mystery waiting to be solved," William replied crisply, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. Lauren scribbled locked room in her notes and underlined it twice. Doyle sighed. Owner swears someone broke in overnight. Alarm never tripped. Doors locked from the inside when she arrived. Window latches untouched. And yet, he gestured them inside. The interior of velvet ground looked like it belonged on the cover of an artsy zine. Strings of Edison bulbs drooped from the ceiling. Mismatched chairs, framed tables covered with abandoned sketchbooks and flyers for open mic nights. A mural of a giant coffee cup with angel wings sprawled across one brick wall, graffiti style. But the centerpiece wasn't the decor. It was the counter. More specifically, the register drawer behind the counter, yanked open and completely empty. Cash gone, William asked. Not just cash, Doyle said. Owner claimed someone stole her grandmother's locket, kept it under the register as a lucky charm. William drifted toward the counter, his movements precise and deliberate. He didn't simply look, he dissected. His gaze snagged on a scuff mark near the baseboards, the faintest ripple in the dust where a chair had been dragged, a bent teaspoon left beside a sink with its handle oddly twisted. Lauren perched on a bar stool, flipping open her notebook. So, no broken locks, no busted windows, no alarm tripped. Either someone had a key, or someone never left, William finished smoothly. He turned to Doyle. Have you searched the premises? Top to bottom, closet, bathroom, storage, empty. William crouched, running a hand along the floorboards behind the counter. His voice dropped to a murmur. Not empty, just well hidden. Lauren leaned forward. What are you seeing? He plucked a tiny fragment from between two boards, a shard of glass, no bigger than a fingernail. It glimmered under the cafe lights. Doyle squinted. Could have come from a mug. Or, William said softly, from something else entirely. They spent the next hour combing through the cafe. William had Lauren stand at the door while he tested the locks, timing how quickly each bolt set and how the key turned. He traced the fire escape ladder outside the second-story window, noting faint traces of boot rubber. He even borrowed a barista's apron from the back and used it to measure the width of a gap between the counter and the wall. Does he always do this? Lauren whispered to Doyle at one point. All the time, Doyle grunted. Sometimes he's right. Sometimes he's insufferable. Usually both. Finally, William stood in the middle of the cafe, hands clasped behind his back. This wasn't about money. Lauren blinked. What do you mean? The register's empty. Yes, but... He pointed toward the espresso machine. Notice anything off? Lauren squinted. It's... shiny. William rolled his eyes. The steam wand, bent deliberately. Whoever broke in wanted a distraction, to make the owner think cash was the target, but the real goal. He held up the glass shard. Was hidden elsewhere, likely in the locket itself. Doyle frowned. You're saying the locket was the point? Think about it. No sign of forced entry. Whoever did this knew the cafe, knew where she kept it, and, most importantly, knew how to exit unseen. Which means, inside job, Lauren finished, eyes widening. William's smile sharpened. Precisely, someone with access. A staff member, most likely. The question isn't how they got in, it's how they staged it to look impossible. They assembled the staff in the cafe that afternoon. 3 baristas, all jittery and defensive, and the owner, a middle-aged woman with streaks of purple in her hair. William paced like a professor before a lecture hall, his gaze slicing from one face to another. You locked up last night? He asked the owner. Of course I did. Alone. William nodded slowly. Then the thief was already inside. They hid after closing, slept, perhaps, curled behind the counter or in the restroom. When you left, they had the cafe to themselves. They stole what they wanted, and then walked out in the morning with a spare key. The locks weren't tampered with because they didn't need to be. One of the baristas, tall, nervous, with ink stains on his fingers, shifted in his seat. William's eyes snapped toward him. "You," William said. "You left early last night, didn't you?" The barista stammered. I wasn't feeling well." "Of course you weren't, because you needed to slip back in while the others weren't looking. You knew about the locket, you knew where it was hidden, and you—" William flicked the shard of glass onto the table in front of him. "You cracked it open to retrieve what was inside." The cafe fell silent. Lauren leaned forward. "What was inside?" William's expression darkened. "That," he said, "is what concerns me most." The barista broke down under questioning, admitting he'd been approached weeks earlier by an anonymous buyer who offered him a small fortune if he could retrieve the locket. He'd thought it was just sentimental jewelry, but the buyer had insisted. When Doyle pressed him for details, the barista recalled only one thing. The buyer had signed each message with a single word: artisan. Later that evening, William and Lauren walked out onto the slick sidewalk. The rain had returned, making the neon signs ripple across the puddles. Lauren clutched her notebook, heart pounding. "So the artisan's name comes up again. First diamonds in Midtown, now a locket in a cafe. He's leaving breadcrumbs." William stared at the shard of glass glinting in his palm. His voice was barely audible above the rain. "Not breadcrumbs, patterns, and the city is his canvas." He closed his fist, and the glass cut into his skin, a pinprick of red welling against pale knuckles. Chapter 4. Threads of glass. New York's Diamond District isn't built for daylight. Sure, the sidewalks stay crammed from 9 to 5. Tourists trailing guides waving miniature American flags. Diamond brokers whispering deals in Hebrew, Yiddish, Russian, Hindi, Arabic, Korean. Neon pawn signs blink beside velvet-windowed boutiques. Street hawkers murmur promises of best price in every accent the city has invented. But even under the sun, the place feels nocturnal. It carries the hush of locked safes and shuttered blinds, as if all its secrets exist under tungsten bulbs and backroom spotlights. William Cross stood in the middle of 47th Street, coat collar up, eyes flicking not at the storefronts, but at the way reflections fractured on the glass awnings. Every pane bent the city's face slightly wrong, like a kaleidoscope made of money and lies. Lauren Whitaker jogged up beside him, out of breath from weaving past a shouting tour group. "You know," she said, trying not to pant, "most people stop to look at the diamonds, not the ventilation grates." "Most people don't get called here at 6 in the morning," William said without turning. "And most people don't notice the metal shutter at Malkin's Jewelers is down when every other store is already open." Lauren frowned, following his gaze. The shutter was down. Not all the way, though. Half closed, like a blink caught mid-motion. A police barricade cut across the sidewalk in front of it, blue tape fluttering against a stale wind. Detective Marcus Doyle appeared from the cluster of uniforms beyond the tape. He looked about as thrilled as he had at the cafe case, though his eyes held less outright suspicion today. He jerked his chin at William. "Couldn't ignore your voicemail if I tried, could I?" "I didn't leave a voicemail," William said. "Yeah, but I know you'd be here anyway. Saves me time." Lauren smiled faintly. Doyle's irritation at William was as dependable as the subway delays. Doyle stepped aside. "Come on, Cross. But for once, try not to act like you own the place." Inside, Malkin's Jewelers looked as though a ghost had walked through it. Not smashed, not gutted, but touched, delicately, surgically. The glass display cases were still intact, though faint cracks spidered across their surfaces, like stress fractures waiting to finish breaking. Diamonds worth millions had been lifted clean out, velvet trays left like empty coffins. The alarm system panel blinked steady green. No trip recorded, no breach detected. Lauren's hand went to her notebook, scribbling. So, how do you rob a diamond store without breaking a single lock or triggering an alarm? William crouched by one of the cases. The crack across its surface caught the early light in a curious way. Too sharp, too deliberate. He tapped the glass with one gloved finger. "You don't rob it," he murmured. "You're invited in." Doyle scowled. "You saying inside job?" William didn't answer right away. His eyes moved to the far wall where a gilded mirror hung. Not the kind jewelers usually keep. It was ornamental, antique. The glass surface had been etched faintly, so faintly you had to stand at the right angle to catch it. Lauren saw it when William tilted his head, shifting her body to mirror him. And there it was. Etched lines, barely visible, forming an interlaced symbol. A circle broken by 3 straight cuts like rays. It caught the light with eerie precision. Lauren's pen paused. "That wasn't here before, was it?" Doyle followed their line of sight. He went pale. "Jesus, I didn't even notice that." William rose, his expression unreadable. "Because it wasn't meant for you." Doyle's jaw tightened. "Then who the hell was it meant for?" The corners of William's mouth lifted just slightly. "Me." The investigation stretched through the morning. Detectives interviewed staff, checked security logs, dusted for prints. Nothing. No evidence of forced entry. The surveillance system showed static during the critical window, pure white noise that burned out 30 minutes of tape. Lauren stuck close to William, watching his restless circuit around the shop. He had that look again, the one she'd seen at the skyscraper, at the cafe, like a dog catching the scent of something just out of sight. His fingers brushed along frames, hinges, display latches, never settling. At last, he crouched again by the etched mirror. The faint symbol still shimmered like frost. "This wasn't carved with a tool," he said softly. Lauren leaned closer. "Then how?" He shook his head. "Heat, focused heat, like glasswork. Whoever did this didn't just leave a calling card. They signed it." Lauren's skin prickled. Signed it. Across the room, Doyle barked orders into his phone. William's voice dropped low, meant only for her. "I told you every crime tells you who committed it if you know how to listen. This one's whispering." Lauren almost whispered back, without meaning to. "What's it saying?" His eyes flicked up, meeting hers. For the first time, she saw something not just sharp, but unsettled behind them. "It's saying he knows me." By the time they left the Diamond District, the city had swallowed the crime scene whole. Tourists snapped photos against the police tape, oblivious. Brokers argued with clients on their phones. A street preacher screamed about greed from the curb. Lauren clutched her notes. "That symbol, it means something to you, doesn't it?" William didn't answer, not right away. He lit a cigarette, exhaling slow. "It's a circle fractured 3 times. Glass fractures like that under pressure, always along stress lines. An artisan would know how to control that. Artisan." He gave a hollow little laugh. "That's what he's calling himself, isn't it? No need for monikers unless you want to be remembered." Lauren felt her pulse quicken. "You've heard of him before?" William turned his head, looking back down 47th Street, where the light splintered across all those storefronts like jagged reflections. "Let's just say this isn't his first piece." And in the gleam of the city's glass, for a heartbeat, Lauren thought she saw their reflections crack too. Chapter 5. The Vanishing Violinist. Carnegie Hall had always been a cathedral for sound. Lauren Whitaker had only been inside twice before, once on a high school field trip, and once as a guest, clinging to the very last row of the balcony. But tonight, walking through the velvet corridors, it felt like she was trespassing somewhere holier than any church she'd ever set foot in. The walls were rich with gilt, polished wood, and history. The hush of expectation from the audience thrummed like a collective held breath. William Cross moved at her side, dark suit immaculate, but his gaze wasn't on the chandeliers or the grand red curtains. He kept scanning reflections, bronzed sconces, the sheen of polished instruments, even the gloss on the program in Lauren's hands. He was searching for fractures, distortions, the kind that whispered of something wrong. "Remind me," Lauren murmured, glancing down at the program. "How exactly did the Bureau talk us into this one?" "World-renowned violinist," William replied, not looking at her. "Gone missing mid-performance. 30 witnesses swear he never left the stage." Lauren raised her eyebrows. "And no one noticed him walk off?" "He didn't walk," William said flatly. "One moment he was bowing, the next, nothing." They found Detective Doyle pacing near the wings, muttering into his phone. He waved them over irritably, though Lauren caught the relief that softened his shoulders when he saw them. "Cross, Whitaker, I'll say it once. If this is another circus, you're paying my overtime out of pocket." William only half smiled. "Don't worry, this circus doesn't have clowns, just magicians." They were led backstage, where stagehands whispered nervously and members of the orchestra clutched instruments like lifelines. The missing man's dressing room had already been searched, but it looked untouched. Music sheets scattered across a mahogany desk, a bow left resting against a half-polished violin. Lauren brushed her fingers across the pages, notes meticulously written, precise. But in the margins, someone had scrawled thin symbols, arcs, triangles, lines intersecting, not musical notation, something else. "See this?" she asked softly. William leaned over her shoulder, his eyes narrowed. Glass fractures again. He was studying them. Lauren felt her chest tighten. Studying, or following instructions? Before he could answer, Doyle shoved a stagehand toward them. "This one saw it happen. Tell them." The boy couldn't have been older than 19, freckles standing out starkly against his pale face. "I swear, I was looking right at him. Maestro lifted his bow for the cadenza, and then it was like the air folded. His outline just bent, like heat rising off asphalt. Then he was gone." Lauren's skin prickled, like a mirage. The boy nodded rapidly. William crouched, steadying his gaze with a kind of quiet intensity. "Did you hear anything when it happened? A sound? A note out of place?" The boy licked his lips. "Yeah, a high pitch, like glass about to break. Just for a second." William's jaw clenched. The hall itself was even worse. They stood on stage beneath the bright, suffocating lights. The seats beyond were empty now, but Lauren imagined them filled. The hush, the music swelling, the sudden collective gasp as a man vanished into thin air. She tried to picture it, but the thought alone was dizzying. William walked to center stage, his shoes clicking softly on the wood. He closed his eyes, tilted his head, and listened. To nothing. To silence. But Lauren knew that silence, to him, was never empty. Finally, he spoke. This wasn't an abduction. It was an exhibition. Doyle made a disgusted noise. "Exhibition? What the hell are you talking about?" William opened his eyes, sharp and cold. "The artisan doesn't steal things for profit. He steals them to prove he can. A violinist vanishing in the middle of Carnegie Hall is a performance. We're the audience." Lauren's throat felt dry. She looked out at the sea of empty red seats, and suddenly they didn't feel empty at all. The investigation wound late into the night. William studied reflections in the violinist's mirror, the sheen of the polished floorboards, even the curved brass of the music stands. He moved with the precision of someone reading invisible text written across every surface. Lauren followed, scribbling notes, but she couldn't shake the sense of being watched. not by people, but by the glass itself. Every reflection seemed to bend a little too long, hold their images a little too sharp. Near the conductor's podium, William froze. He knelt, touching a faint line in the wood, almost imperceptible. Heat scorched, thin as a hair. A fracture. He whispered. He was here. Lauren crouched beside him. The artisan. William nodded once. His voice was low, almost reverent. And he left us a message. There, burned faintly into the floorboards, the same broken circle, 3 cuts fracturing its edge. Lauren felt a chill ripple through her bones. So, what is it this time? What does it mean? William stood, his shadow stretching long in the empty stage lights. It means he's finished practicing. Now he's composing. They left Carnegie Hall just before dawn. The city outside was washed in that pale, unreal gray that only came between night and day, when even Manhattan seemed to hold its breath. Lauren tugged her coat tighter. Why music? Why him? William lit a cigarette, the flame flaring against the wind. Because music is resonance. Glass sings before it shatters. He's weaving sound and reflection into the same piece. Lauren shivered, not from the cold. William exhaled smoke into the dim light, his eyes distant. He's not just showing me he can do it. He's showing me how close he's willing to get. And for the first time, Lauren wondered if William Cross wasn't chasing the artisan, if the artisan was chasing him. Chapter 6. The Shadows in the Glass. Lauren Whitaker had grown used to the city whispering at night. Steam rose from manholes, trains groaned underground, neon signs blinked their exhausted Morse code. New York never slept, but it did dream, flickering, restless, half-heard. But since Carnegie Hall, the dreams had turned on her. She woke in her apartment at 3:14 a.m., heart racing, convinced someone had said her name. The voice hadn't come from the street or from a neighbor's wall. It had come from her mirror. She stared at it now from her bed, moonlight glazing its surface silver. Nothing moved. Just her own reflection, pale, wide-eyed, breathing shallowly. Get a grip, Whitaker, she muttered, dragging a hand over her face. But even her whisper felt too loud, too exposed. She swung her legs out of bed, padded barefoot across cold hardwood, and threw a towel over the mirror. Only then did she manage to sleep again. The next morning, William Cross looked like he hadn't slept at all. He sat at the edge of his office desk, cigarette smoldering, forgotten between 2 fingers, gaze fixed on the glass of water beside him. Not drinking it. Just watching how the sunlight fractured through it, throwing pale threads across the wall. Lauren set her bag down with a thump. If I didn't know better, I'd say you were trying to set that water on fire. William blinked, slow. It hums. Lauren frowned. Excuse me. He finally looked at her, eyes bloodshot but steady. The way the light bends through it, it hums. I can almost hear it. Lauren resisted the urge to rub her arms. She hated when he said things like that, not because she didn't believe him, because she did. So, Carnegie Hall, any new insights since yesterday? Or are you just staring at your water until it sings? His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. He stubbed the cigarette out, stood, and grabbed his coat. Come on, the bureau just flagged another one. The address took them to a high-rise on the Upper West Side, the kind of place with uniformed doormen, spotless marble lobbies, and an elevator that made Lauren feel underdressed just by standing in it. Doyle was already there, barking orders at uniforms who looked grateful to have something physical to do. He waved them toward a penthouse apartment whose double doors hung crooked on broken hinges. Inside, it was a gallery of glass. Shattered wine glasses sparkled across the carpet. A chandelier had dropped in pieces, every crystal shard catching sunlight like trapped stars. A mirrored wall was spider-webbed into fractures, but somehow hadn't collapsed, holding its shape as if by willpower alone. At the center of it all stood a single violin, propped neatly upright on its bow as if balancing in defiance of gravity. Lauren whispered, "Jesus Christ." William crouched low, eyes scanning the fractures. His fingers hovered near the bow, but never touched it. It's a continuation, same patterns as the whole. He's experimenting with resonance. Doyle's voice was sharp. Experimenting? He destroyed a $3 million apartment and the tenant's gone. Lauren's head snapped toward him. Gone, as in missing? Doyle's jaw was tight. Owner's daughter was here practicing piano. 15. Parents found the apartment like this. No trace of her. Silence fell like dust. Lauren felt something tug in her chest, like pity, like fury. 15. The artisan was escalating. William, however, was still staring at the violin. He left it balanced for us, a demonstration. Lauren forced her voice steady. And what's it demonstrating? William's eyes were dark. That he can choose his notes now. That he can take people the way you pluck a string. That night, Lauren couldn't face her mirror. She brushed her teeth with her eyes fixed firmly on the sink, towel still hanging where she'd draped it. She hated how childish it felt, like hiding from a closet monster. But when she reached up to pull it away, her hand froze, because beneath the towel, she swore she saw movement. Her reflection shifting slightly before she touched the fabric, tilting its head just a fraction too slow. She ripped the towel free, heart hammering. Her reflection stared back, identical. Nothing wrong, nothing out of place. But as she leaned closer, she noticed the faintest shimmer along the edges of the glass, a quiver, like heat. And for one breathless second, she thought she saw a shape standing just behind her. She didn't sleep. Instead, she called William, pacing her apartment like a caged animal until he finally answered. "You're awake," he said simply. "Yeah," she snapped, sharper than she meant. "And so are you, I bet. Tell me I'm not losing it. Tell me the mirrors are wrong." Silence crackled through the line. "Finally," he said, "you're not losing it. They are wrong. Every reflective surface in this city is humming louder. He's tuning them." Lauren pressed her forehead to the cool glass of her window, trying not to panic at the idea of every reflection in every window being a potential door. "Why? What for?" William's voice was grim. "Because he's building to something, and when the note's finally right, it won't be a single disappearance. It'll be a whole movement." The line went dead. 3 days later, the girl from the penthouse was still missing. Lauren sat in Doyle's office, listening to him rant about resources, press pressure, public image. She barely heard him. All she could see was the spider-webbed glass wall, shimmering like it wanted to collapse, but never quite did. When she left, William was waiting in the hallway. His coat was buttoned, his expression unreadable. "She's not dead," he said without preamble. Lauren stopped. "What?" "The girl. She's not dead. He doesn't kill them." His eyes were distant, haunted. "He moves them. Somewhere else." Lauren swallowed. "You sound awfully sure of that." William's gaze flicked toward the glass window at the end of the hall, where sunlight fractured across the pane. For just an instant, Lauren thought she saw 2 silhouettes there instead of one. William's and someone else's. He whispered, "Because I can hear her." The city kept on moving. Trains, cars, laughter, arguments. But Lauren felt like she was walking through a reflection of it all, brittle and trembling. She couldn't shake the sense that at any second the glass might shatter, and show what was really underneath. And worse, she was beginning to believe that William Cross was right. That the artisan wasn't building a puzzle. He was composing a requiem. Chapter 7. Through the glass. Lauren told herself she wasn't afraid of mirrors. That was a lie. Every time she passed one now store windows, train doors, polished steel in elevators, she braced herself. Tried to look casual, natural. Pretended she wasn't listening for the faint hitch in her reflection's timing, the way it sometimes blinked a heartbeat after she did. The bureau cafeteria had wall-length glass panes overlooking the city. She avoided them, kept her tray close, ate fast. When Doyle made a comment about her rabbit nerves, she laughed too hard, too sharp, and left before he could press further. It was only when she was alone that she let herself admit it. Something was watching her through the glass, and it was patient. William Cross looked worse than she did. She found him in the evidence archive, lights dimmed, boxes stacked around like crooked tombstones. He sat cross-legged on the floor, case files spread in a halo around him. His coat was off, sleeves rolled, hair unkempt in a way Lauren hadn't seen before. "You're brooding in a basement," she said, trying for levity. It fell flat. He didn't look up. "I'm listening." Lauren set her bag down, crouched across from him. Listening to what? The walls, the glass cases. They all carry resonance. You can hear echoes if you stay quiet long enough. His eyes flicked to hers, wild but clear. The girl, from the penthouse. She's not screaming. She's humming, like she's trying to stay in key. Lauren's throat tightened. "You sound like you're going under, William. Or maybe I'm already under," he said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Maybe the rest of you are the ones refusing to admit you're standing on a glass floor." She shivered despite herself. That night, she dreamed of her apartment mirror. Except it wasn't her reflection standing there. It was a version of her same clothes, same hair, but its smile was too wide. Its eyes held a brightness that wasn't hers. When it lifted its hand, palm flat against the glass, she realized the mirror version's nails were longer, sharper. When she woke, her palm stung. She looked down to see 4 faint scratches. At the office, Doyle shoved another file at her. 2 more disappearances, different boroughs. Both apartments looked like glass bombs went off. Neighbors heard violin music before it happened. Lauren flipped through photos. Fractured mirrors, splintered windows, a dining table covered in shards like spilled sugar. But what froze her wasn't the destruction. It was the faint shape left behind on one cracked pane, an outline like a handprint pressed from the other side. Her stomach lurched. William leaned over her shoulder. "He's refining the technique. The reflections are getting stronger. He can hold shapes now." Lauren closed the folder too fast, nearly crumpling the papers. "Don't talk about it like art. These are kids." William's eyes didn't leave the photo. To him, that's the same thing. That evening, Lauren avoided her apartment. She wandered the city instead, nursing coffee after coffee in different diners until she couldn't justify another refill. She told herself she wasn't running, but eventually she went home. The towel still covered her bedroom mirror. She forced herself to pull it down. If she let fear dictate her movements, she'd lose. Her reflection stared back, tired, hollow-eyed. She exhaled, and then it smiled. Her body hadn't moved, her lips hadn't twitched, but her reflection's mouth curled up anyway, deliberate and slow. Lauren staggered backward, hitting her dresser. "No, no, no, no." The reflection lifted its hand, tapped on the glass from the inside. The sound was soft, but real. She didn't sleep. She went to Williams. He opened the door after only one knock, as though he'd been waiting. His apartment was worse than she expected. Blinds shut, stacks of notebooks, mirrors draped with cloths. One bare wall was covered in drawn patterns, circles, lines, broken staff notations like sheet music that had been torn apart. Lauren's voice shook despite herself. It smiled at me. William studied her, and for once his own steadiness seemed fragile. Then you've been marked. Lauren snapped. Don't say it like that. What the hell does it mean? He gestured to the wall. Reflections are thresholds. Once something on the other side acknowledges you, it's aware. He's using you as a test. You're not random anymore. You're chosen. Her pulse thudded in her ears. Chosen for what? William's eyes were shadowed, unreadable. To be part of the performance. The days that followed bled together. Lauren caught glimpses her reflection lagging, its expression skewed, its eyes tracking her half a beat too long. She stopped brushing her teeth in the bathroom, stopped glancing at the shop windows, stopped trusting herself to look without seeing something that wasn't supposed to be there. Colleagues noticed the dark circles under her eyes. Doyle told her to take a day off, but she refused. She couldn't explain that time away from the bureau meant time alone with her mirrors. Only William seemed unsurprised. If anything, he seemed resigned. One evening, after hours, she found him staring at his office window. You're too calm about this, she accused. I've been hearing them longer than you, he said softly, since before the artisan. Lauren froze. What do you mean? He turned toward her, and for once there was no guard in his expression. Just exhaustion. And grief. I had a sister, he said. She disappeared when I was 17. Room full of broken glass. No body, no trace. Everyone thought she ran away. Lauren's chest ached. And you think... I know, William whispered. His voice was almost reverent, almost broken. He was practicing even then. She was his first successful note. That night, Lauren sat in bed staring at her covered mirror. She thought about William's sister, about the girl still humming somewhere in the resonance, about her own reflection smiling without her. She wanted to believe it was stress, sleep deprivation, a trick of the mind. But when she finally reached up to switch off the light, she saw it. Her reflection in the dark glass of her window, still smiling. Chapter 8. The second voice. Lauren didn't look in mirrors anymore. She couldn't. The bathroom was a trap, the polished chrome of her kettle an ambush. Even the rain-slicked streets outside caught her in their sheen. The world had turned reflective, all surfaces conspiring against her. And the thing inside the other, Lauren had grown bolder. It started small, a twitch at the corner of its mouth, a blink too late, but now it mouthed words. Silent at first. Then sound began to leak through. The first time she heard it, she was brushing lint off her blazer in the hallway. She glanced at the tall mirror by her door, uncovered because she'd grown tired of living in shadows, and saw herself staring back, lips moving. Don't go out. Her own voice, but not hers. Lauren froze. What? The reflection leaned closer, pressing its forehead against the glass. Its lips parted, and the whisper slid out, thin and ragged, but audible. They'll see you. Lauren dropped her keys, stumbled backward. Her heart slammed against her ribs, hands shaking so violently she could barely pick them up again. When she dared look back, the reflection was normal. Her. Empty-eyed, hollow with exhaustion, but ordinary. But she knew what she'd heard. At the bureau, she kept her head down. Doyle noticed, of course. He always did. You look like you haven't slept since last fiscal quarter, he said, clapping her shoulder too hard. Seriously, you need time off. Go drink yourself stupid on a beach somewhere." "I'm fine," she lied. He gave her a long look, mouth pressed thin. "If you break, cross breaks, and then I've got 2 liabilities instead of 1. She wanted to argue, but the words stuck, because part of her wondered if that wasn't already true. William was waiting in her office. He stood by the blinds, staring at the narrow slats of light cutting across the floor. When he turned, his eyes were ringed, fever bright. "You've heard it," he said, not a question. Lauren didn't ask how he knew. She just nodded. "What did it say?" Her throat was dry. "It told me not to go out, that someone would see me." William exhaled, almost a laugh. "Paranoia is the first movement. He's weaving you into the resonance, making you part of the chorus." Lauren's skin crawled. I'm not part of anything." William's expression softened, but it wasn't comforting. It was pity. Neither was my sister. That night, she tested it. She sat before the mirror with a lamp turned low, notebook in her lap. Her pulse rattled with every second. "Say something," she whispered. For a long time, nothing. Then her reflection smiled. "You don't belong here." Lauren gripped her pen so tightly it snapped. "Where then? Where do I belong?" The reflection tilted its head, the angle just slightly wrong. In the glass, her stomach dropped. "You're not me." Its smile widened. "Aren't I?" The whisper was sharper this time, cutting straight through her chest. Her hand shook so hard she couldn't hold the pen. She fled. At William's apartment, she banged on the door until he answered. He looked worse than before. Unshaven, shirt buttoned wrong, eyes darting like he hadn't rested in days. Without waiting, she pushed past him. "It talked to me." William shut the door gently, as though not to disturb something listening. "What did it say?" Lauren's breath came fast. "It said I belong in the glass." His silence was worse than any answer. "Finally," he said, "then it's begun." Lauren snapped. "Stop talking in riddles. Just tell me what it means." William dragged a hand through his hair. "The artisan doesn't just want to create resonance. He wants to erase the barrier between the real and the reflected. He's using you to thin the glass, to make it porous." Lauren's legs nearly gave out. "And if he succeeds?" William looked at her with something like sorrow. "Then the city becomes an echo chamber. No separation, no safety. Everyone's reflection becomes a door." The following days blurred. The whispers didn't stop. In the elevator at work, her reflection leaned in close, mouthing words she could almost feel against her ear. At night, her bedroom window showed her smiling even when she wasn't. Once, in a polished steel panel on the subway, she saw herself blink and the reflection's eyes stayed open, watching. Sleep was impossible. Food tasted like ash. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw glass fracturing outward in infinite patterns, cutting her into mirrored shards. Then came the call. Another scene. Another apartment. Lauren and William arrived together. The crime scene was worse this time. Every mirror in the place had burst outward, spraying the floor with glittering shrapnel. The victim's bed was soaked red, but no body remained. Only a faint humming lingered in the air, vibrating through the walls like a bow drawn across glass strings. Lauren pressed her hand to her ears, but it didn't help. The sound was inside her. William crouched near a broken pane. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was certain. "He's accelerating. Each one builds on the last. He's tuning the city, Lauren, and he's using you as the anchor." Her reflection caught her eye in a cracked shard at her feet. It mouthed a single word. "Soon." Lauren's chest constricted. And for the first time, She believed it. Chapter 9. Fingers on the glass. Lauren didn't trust her own apartment anymore. The walls groaned when the wind pressed against them, but she heard whispers braided into the sound. The refrigerator hummed off-beat, like a note sustained too long. The television flickered once, twice, and when the screen blackened, she saw herself sitting on the couch with a smile she didn't wear. Every surface had become treachery, but she refused to leave. Some stubborn shard of her wanted to cling to normalcy, to pretend the familiar furniture, the stack of unfinished case files on the coffee table, meant her life was still hers. She'd covered most of the mirrors again. Sheets, towels, coats hastily nailed across the frames. Only one was left uncovered, because something in her wanted to watch. To see the proof with her own eyes, rather than keep doubting her sanity. That was the mirror in her bedroom. Tall, ornate, a relic from her grandmother's estate. It stood where it always had, beside the dresser. And tonight, she sat facing it. Her reflection stared back, patient. For a long time it did nothing, just mirrored her posture, her tense jaw, the bruised half-moons under her eyes. Lauren whispered, "Say it, whatever you're waiting to say." The reflection tilted its head a fraction late as though considering, then its lips parted. "You're already halfway through." Lauren's pulse raced. "Through what?" The reflection didn't answer. Its hand lifted, pressing palm to glass. She stared at it, throat dry. Slowly, against all instinct, she raised her own hand, pressed her palm to the cool surface. Her reflection's fingers curled. And Lauren felt it. A faint pressure, like the glass had thinned to nothing but a membrane. The touch didn't stop at the surface. It pushed back. Lauren ripped her hand away with a strangled gasp. The reflection kept its palm there, smiling now, faint and cruel. Almost. The whisper was clearer this time, not faint, not fragile, as though the sound came not from behind glass, but from inside the room. Lauren staggered back, heartbeat pounding in her throat. And then the mirror bulged. Just for an instant, as though something pressed from the other side, stretching the surface like water. A handprint swelled outward, fingers, nails. Lauren screamed and stumbled for the door. She slammed it shut, chest heaving, her entire body trembling. When she dared glance back, the mirror was flat again. Her reflection only stared. She didn't sleep that night. At dawn, she went straight to William's apartment, still in yesterday's clothes. He looked worse than she did. Hollow-eyed, shirt untucked, hair sticking at wild angles. His walls were plastered with notes, photographs, printed case files, and diagrams. Circles overlapping, glass panes marked with strange notations, scores of music drawn across floor-to-ceiling paper. He barely looked up when she burst in. "It tried to touch me," Lauren blurted. That caught him. His eyes snapped to hers. "Describe it." She shivered, arms wrapped tight around herself. It pushed through, the glass bent. "I felt it." William closed his eyes, jaw tightening. "He's accelerating the cadence. You're the fulcrum, Lauren. Every time you look, every time you listen, you bring the barrier closer to breaking." Lauren snapped. "Then tell me how to stop it." His hands trembled where they clutched the papers. "I don't know. Not yet." She stared at him, fury and terror boiling in equal measure. "You don't know, or you won't tell me." William's face crumpled in something close to grief. "If I knew, she'd still be alive." Silence fell. Lauren didn't press. The next case struck harder. A hotel this time, 20 floors up, a luxury suite with mirrored walls. The scene reeked of ozone and blood. Every reflective surface was spider-webbed with cracks, as though struck from inside. The victim's body had been left behind, if it could be called a body. The skin was lacerated in geometric patterns, lines so precise they looked drawn by a compass and blade. The eyes were missing, not gouged, taken. Lauren turned away and nearly retched. William crouched by the wall, staring at the cracked glass. His reflection stared back at him, slightly delayed, lips moving faster than his own. He muttered under his breath, scribbling symbols into a notebook. Lauren stepped closer. "What are you hearing?" William didn't look up. Harmony. He's building toward the crescendo. The artisan doesn't just kill, he composes. Each death is another instrument. Lauren's skin prickled. "And I'm what? His soloist?" William's pen halted. His knuckles went white. "You're the key that unlocks the final passage." That night, the mirror didn't wait. Lauren was brushing her teeth when the bathroom glass shimmered. Her reflection leaned forward, lips peeling back into a grin that stretched too far. She dropped her toothbrush, backing against the wall. "Stay back," she whispered, absurd words to say to herself. The reflection's hand pressed to the surface, and then with a wet, bending sound the glass opened. Fingers slid through, pale, gleaming, wet with silver light. They scrabbled against the air, reaching for her. Lauren screamed, shoving past the sink. She slammed her shoulder into the frame, desperate to break the contact. The hand snapped back into the glass, vanishing like a ripple, but the surface shivered long after. Her reflection laughed. Not aloud, but she could hear it anyway, inside her skull. "You can't run from yourself." Lauren fled, leaving the light on, the mirror uncovered. She didn't dare go back in. The city was changing. Lauren noticed it the next morning, walking to the bureau. The skyscraper windows hummed faintly when the breeze passed. The puddles in the street rippled without wind. People glanced at their own reflections in shop windows and frowned, unsettled, like they'd seen something shift when no one else had. It wasn't just her anymore. And the thought chilled her more than the mirror's touch. If William was right, the artisan wasn't hunting victims at random. He was tuning the entire city, note by note, reflection by reflection. And Lauren was already inside the composition. That night, she dreamed of glass. Endless corridors of mirrors stretched in every direction. She walked barefoot, every step echoing too loud. Her reflections didn't follow her. They stayed still, whispering in unison. Almost. She clamped her hands over her ears, but it didn't stop. At the end of the corridor stood a single pane, taller than the rest. Behind it, the artisan. She couldn't see his face clearly, only the outline of a man in a long coat, his hands lifted as though conducting an orchestra. When he turned toward her, his face was made of shards, thousands of fragments fitted into a smile. The whispers swelled, becoming a roar, and Lauren woke gasping, the echo of breaking glass still in her ears. Chapter 10. Chasing Shadows. The Brooklyn Bridge had always been a landmark of promise, an iron and stone handshake across the East River. By daylight, it gleamed with tourists and joggers, a postcard wrapped in cables and arches. But tonight, it looked different, sinister. The suspension wires hummed with the wind like the strings of a giant, taut violin, and the air carried the tang of salt water and oil from the barges drifting beneath. William Cross leaned against the pedestrian railing, hands in his coat pockets, scanning the trickle of late-night foot traffic. His eyes weren't on the bridge itself, but on the city's pulse beyond it. The faint glow of headlights cresting the span, the murmuring rhythm of shoes on planks, the occasional burst of laughter from drunk college kids staggering across. Every movement was part of a symphony, and William was listening for the wrong note. Lauren Whitaker stood a few steps behind him, adjusting the strap of her messenger bag. Her breath fogged in the cold, and she shifted uneasily. "You're sure this is where he'll be?" "No," William said, flat and immediate. "But if he's smart, and he is, this is where the trail leads." She tilted her head. "You mean it's a hunch?" "An educated one." He tapped the railing with his knuckle, listening to the faint resonance. "Every step the Glassmaker's taken has been about spectacle, not subtlety. He wants the city to see him, and if you wanted to stage a message, where better than here? Iconic, romantic, public, vulnerable." Lauren opened her mouth to reply, but William suddenly straightened. A man had just stepped onto the bridge walkway from the Manhattan side, hood drawn up, hands in pockets, stride too deliberate. Something about the way he moved set William's instincts flaring. "Stay back," William murmured, already slipping into motion. The man walked steadily, passing a cluster of tourists, then glanced over his shoulder. William caught it. The twitch, the unnecessary flicker of nerves. Prey checking for pursuit. And then the man bolted. "Damn it," William hissed and took off. Lauren's shout vanished behind him as the chase began. The bridge roared with noise. The hum of tires on asphalt, the rattle of trucks, the rush of the East River beneath. William dodged through pedestrians, vaulting around a railing as startled shouts rose in his wake. His quarry was fast, but sloppy. His shoes slapped the boards too loudly, betraying each desperate stride. "Police!" William shouted, not because it was true, but because it opened a path. People peeled aside instinctively, giving him a clear line forward. The suspect darted left, over the dividing barrier, and plunged into the traffic lane. Horns blared instantly. A yellow cab screeched, missing him by inches. William didn't hesitate. He followed, weaving through headlights, his body reacting before thought could catch up. A semi's horn screamed, wind buffeting him as it barreled past. For a heartbeat, William was running in pure chaos. Engines, metal, adrenaline. The suspect vaulted the barrier again, plunging into the pedestrian path on the opposite side. William followed, chest burning, legs pumping. Lauren's voice echoed faintly behind him, panicked but distant. The man reached the Brooklyn end of the bridge and didn't slow. He veered hard right, vanishing down the stone steps that spiraled into the underbelly of the bridge's support towers. William barreled after him, boots hammering stone, breath ragged. The stairs spat him out into shadow, a forgotten artery of the bridge where concrete pillars rose like cathedral columns, and the river's stench seeped into the air. The man sprinted toward a chain-link gate, wrenching it open. William slipped through a heartbeat later. They were in the service tunnels now. The echo was immediate. Footsteps slapping against damp concrete, reverberating in every direction. It felt like chasing a ghost through a labyrinth. Rusted pipes dripped overhead. Rats scattered in the beam of flickering fluorescent lights. William's mind worked even as his body gave chase. The Glassmaker had operatives, pawns who played their roles until the moment they were discarded. This man was one of them. Disposable. Which meant the operative suddenly skidded to a halt. William barely had time to register the glint of glass on the floor. Shards, arranged in a careful spiral. A trap. William dove sideways as a hidden tripwire snapped, releasing a cascade of broken bottles from the ceiling. They shattered across the tunnel floor, a rain of razors and sound. His jacket sleeve tore open. A shallow cut bloomed along his forearm, stinging hot, but he rolled to his feet, alive. The operative didn't stop running. By the time William caught up again, they had spilled into the subway system. The tunnels throbbed with distant rumbles of trains, lights stuttering in the stale air. The operative dashed across the platform of a deserted station, leaping down onto the tracks. William followed, lungs aching, body burning. Gravel crunched beneath his boots. The third rail hissed inches away. They sprinted down the tunnel as the rails began to hum with an approaching train. The sound built fast, a monstrous growl in the dark. The operative ducked into a maintenance alcove just before the headlights roared into view. William lunged after him. The train screamed past, wind dragging at his coat, steel rattling his bones. For a moment, it was blinding chaos. Roar, light, heat, and then silence. The alcove was empty. William froze, chest heaving. He swept the beam of his phone light across the concrete, searching. There, on the wall. A single pane of etched glass, mounted with deliberate care. Its surface caught the light and scattered it into broken patterns across the tunnel. Etched words spiraled out from the center, sharp as blades. "Too slow, William." His stomach turned. Not Ethan Vale, not Cross, his name, his real name. The Glassmaker wasn't taunting him blindly. He knew who William was. Footsteps echoed behind him. Lauren stumbled into the tunnel, face pale, breathing hard. "Will," she choked, clutching her side. "Where is he?" William didn't answer. He stared at the shard, his reflection fractured into a dozen jagged pieces. The chase was over, but the game had just escalated. Chapter 11. Fractures in the glass. The reflection wouldn't leave him. Even hours later, sitting in the dim back booth of a Chinatown tea house, William could still see it, his face in 1,000 shards, splintered across etched glass. Too slow, William. His real name, carved like an accusation. Lauren slid into the booth opposite, clutching a steaming cup of green tea. Her hair clung damply to her forehead, still damp from the rain outside. She pushed the cup toward him, studying him carefully. "You haven't said a word since we left the station." William didn't touch the tea. His hands rested on the table, fingers steepled, eyes fixed on the grain of the wood. "He knows me, not just me, who I am. That changes everything." Lauren frowned. "Or it just means he's done his homework. You've been in the bureau, in Homeland, in every agency with a badge and a gun. Background checks leave trails. He could have dug it up." William's jaw tightened. "No, not like this. The name he used, it wasn't on any official record. I buried it years ago." He looked up, eyes dark. "Someone gave it to him." The words landed like a blade between them. Lauren blinked, but didn't speak. The tea house hummed with ordinary life. Porcelain clinking, soft Cantonese murmurs, the hiss of the kettle in the back. But William felt none of it. His world had narrowed to the spiral of possibilities, each one worse than the last. Betrayal, leak, compromise. He finally pushed the untouched tea aside. "We're being played from inside." Lauren crossed her arms, leaning back in the booth. "You're saying the Glassmaker has people in the NYPD?" "I'm saying the Glassmaker has people everywhere." He lowered his voice, though no one nearby seemed to care. "Look at the last 3 sites. Every time we've moved, he's been one step ahead. Too clean, too precise. He knew where we'd be. That doesn't happen without a source." Lauren let the silence stretch before answering. "If you're right, that means anyone we've talked to could have sold us out. Quinn, Internal Affairs. Even Alvarez." The thought hung between them. Lauren finally leaned forward, voice sharp. "So what now? We hole up in basements and play ghost? Or do we actually fight back?" William studied her. For a moment he almost smiled. Her fire was the one thing that cut through the fog. "We fight back, but carefully. No more phones, no more precinct visits. From here on, it's you and me, no intermediaries." Lauren exhaled, a short laugh edged with disbelief. "That's your grand plan. Just us against a city of shadows. You have a better idea." Her eyes held his for a long, loaded moment. Then she looked away, muttering into her tea. "God help me, maybe not." The bell above the tea-house door chimed. William didn't move, but his instincts sharpened instantly. 2 men entered. Civilian clothes, generic jackets, nothing remarkable. Except their eyes scanned too quickly, their steps too deliberate. They didn't come for tea. Lauren noticed it too. Her hand slid beneath the table, fingers brushing her concealed pistol. The men sat at the counter, ordered something perfunctory, then glanced back. Too casual. William's stomach sank. "They know we're here," he whispered without looking at Lauren. "On 3, we move. Kitchen exit. Stay low." Lauren's jaw tightened. She gave the slightest nod. William counted silently. 1, 2. The men rose from the counter. 3. The kitchen erupted in chaos as William shoved through the swinging doors, Lauren on his heels. Pots clattered. Cook shouted in surprise as the pair barreled past. William's shoulder slammed into the back door, bursting into the rain-slick alley beyond. Gunfire cracked behind them. Tiles shattered. Steam hissed. Lauren ducked low, returning fire blind through the kitchen. "They're not cops," she shouted. "Didn't think they were." William dragged her toward the street, weaving through trash bins and neon reflections. Sirens wailed distantly, too far to matter. Another shot ricocheted off a brick wall. William felt the heat of it graze his cheek. They burst onto the street, into a flood of headlights and honking horns. Cars screeched as they sprinted across, weaving through traffic, soaked in rain and adrenaline. By the time they ducked into another alley 3 blocks away, William's lungs burned like fire. He leaned against the wall, sucking air, while Lauren bent double, her hair dripping onto the pavement. She spat a curse between gasps. "They were waiting for us. Again." William's face was grim, which means the leak isn't a theory anymore. It's fact. They reached a safe house by midnight, a rented loft above an abandoned print shop in Dumbo, dusty and forgotten. Lauren collapsed onto an old sofa, peeling her damp jacket off. William stayed by the window, scanning the streetlights below, restless. She watched him in silence for a long time before speaking. "I have to ask you something." "Go on." Lauren's voice was quieter than he'd expected. "If the Glassmaker knows your real name, what else does he know? What are you not telling me?" William didn't turn. The rain streaked the glass, fracturing the city lights into warped patterns, like the etched shard in the tunnel. He wanted to lie, to brush it off, but the truth pressed against his ribs like a blade. "Finally," he said, "before the Bureau, before everything, there was a case, classified. It went wrong. People died, and the Glassmaker, he was there." Lauren sat up straighter. "You've met him before?" William finally looked at her, eyes hard. Not met, survived. The weight of the words settled into the loft like a storm cloud. Neither of them slept that night. Chapter 12. Ash in the veins. The loft smelled of dust and paper rot, like words left too long unread. William hadn't moved from the window. The city hummed below, neon veins of traffic threading through the wet streets, sirens wailing faint in the distance. He stood like a statue, his reflection dim in the glass, fractured by rain. Lauren broke the silence first. She had been pacing, back and forth, like an animal caged. Her bare feet whispered against the warped wooden floor. "This isn't working," she muttered. "We can't keep running like this. He's outmaneuvering us every step. If we don't find the leak, if we don't cut it out, he'll gut us before we even get close." William didn't turn. His voice was low, measured. "I know." She stopped pacing. arms crossed, eyes narrowed. You keep saying you know, but what are you actually going to do about it? Because right now, all I see is a man staring at glass, waiting for it to shatter. That hit deeper than she realized. William's jaw tightened, his reflection grim. "Tomorrow," he said, "we pull strings. Quietly. Off the record. Alvarez first." Lauren blinked. "You think it's him?" "I think Alvarez is the only one who's had access to every location, every detail we've followed. If the Glassmaker has a pipeline, he's top of the list." Lauren sank onto the arm of the sofa, arms folded. "And if you're wrong?" William finally turned from the window. "Then we'll know." They found Alvarez the next day in a precinct cafe, the kind of grey-walled room where exhausted officers lived on bad coffee and vending machine sandwiches. He looked worse than William remembered. Skin pale, eyes ringed with sleepless shadows, shirt wrinkled. He perked up when he saw them, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Cross. Whitaker." He gestured to the chairs across from him. "Wasn't expecting you." Lauren stayed standing, arms folded. William slid into the chair opposite Alvarez, studying him. "We need to talk," William said flatly. Alvarez laughed weakly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Talk? About what? Because if it's about last night, I don't know what to tell you. I wasn't anywhere near. Someone's feeding him." William cut him off. No softness, no hesitation. The words landed sharp. "The Glassmaker. He's ahead of us every time, which means one of our own is in his pocket." The cafe seemed to shrink around them. Alvarez stiffened, his eyes darting between William and Lauren. "That's a hell of an accusation," he said slowly. "It's not an accusation," William said. "It's a fact. I'm just trying to figure out if it's you." The silence stretched. Lauren could hear the hum of the soda machine, the low chatter of officers across the room. Alvarez's jaw clenched. "Cross, I've been risking my badge to cover for you. Do you think I enjoy lying to internal affairs? To my captain? You think that's fun for me?" William's gaze didn't waver. "You've had access to every report, every lead, every site we've touched, and every single time, he's already waiting." Alvarez slammed his palm against the table. A few heads turned. He lowered his voice, eyes burning. "Damn it, I'm not the leak. If you can't see that, maybe you've lost your edge." Lauren finally spoke, voice sharp. "Then prove it. Help us find who is. Because if it isn't you, then the rot's deeper than either of us thought." Alvarez's eyes flicked to her, then back to William. Slowly he exhaled, shoulders slumping. "Fine," he muttered. "There's someone. Internal Affairs has been sniffing around a detective named Kearns. Gambling debts, money problems. He's been desperate. He'd sell out his own mother for the right price." William's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his chest. A name. A thread to pull. "Kearns," he repeated. Alvarez nodded. "If anyone's feeding the Glassmaker, it's him." Later, in the alley behind the cafe, Lauren lit a cigarette, cupping her hand against the drizzle. "You believe him?" she asked. William shook his head. Rain streaked his shoulders, cold and sharp. "I don't believe anyone." Lauren took a drag, exhaling smoke into the damp night. "So, what's the play?" "Kearns. We put eyes on him. No precinct involvement, no official files. Just us." He looked at her, his face shadowed by the flickering streetlight. "If he's clean, Alvarez goes back on the table." Lauren gave a low, humorless laugh. "You're playing chess with knives, William." "Better than waiting to be stabbed," he muttered. They tailed Detective Kearns for 2 nights. He was easy to follow, sloppy, careless, too tired to notice the shadows tracking his movements. They watched him drink in dive bars, lose money at backroom poker tables, argue with bookies in back alleys. Lauren's instincts screamed at her. Every moment she expected him to pass a folded note, whisper a name, make contact with someone in the Glassmaker's orbit. But he never did. On the third night, near midnight, they watched him stagger home, drunk, alone. He collapsed onto a couch in a filthy apartment, the glow of a muted TV flickering over his face. Lauren whispered, "Pathetic. He's not our guy." William didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the drunk detective, a gnawing unease curling in his gut. Something was wrong. Too wrong. The phone in Kern's apartment rang. They watched through the cracked blinds as the detective groaned, fumbling for it. He pressed it to his ear, muttered something William couldn't hear. And then his entire face changed. The bleariness vanished. His back straightened. His eyes sharpened, wide and alert. Whoever was on the other end, they had sobered him instantly. Kern spoke softly, quickly. His hand shook as he lit a cigarette, listening intently. William's pulse thudded in his throat. He couldn't hear the words, but he didn't need to. Lauren's voice was a whisper at his side. "That's him. He's the leak." Minutes later, Kearns hung up. He sat still for a long time, smoke curling in the dim light. Then he rose, walked to a dresser, and pulled something from the bottom drawer. A shard of glass, no bigger than a hand, edges jagged, etched with faint lines like veins. He held it reverently, almost lovingly, as though it were holy. Lauren's breath caught. William's chest went cold. The Glassmaker's reach wasn't just about money or leverage. It was faith, devotion. This wasn't corruption. It was conversion. Chapter 13. Shattered Reflections. The East River at night had a way of swallowing light. Even the glass and steel skyline behind William seemed muted, like the city itself was holding its breath. Pier 11 should have been humming with ferries, late commuters, and tourists chasing skyline photos. Instead, it was a hushed stage, cordoned off, patrolled by a nervous scattering of uniforms, their breath visible in the chill air. William Cross adjusted the collar of his coat and squinted against the glow of the floodlights. He hated the artificial quiet. It wasn't silence. It was prelude, a tuning of instruments before the conductor raised his hand. The Glassmaker loved performance, and this pier, empty, still, gleaming wet from an earlier rain, was his stage. "Are you actually going to stand there and brood dramatically, or will you tell me why we're here?" Lauren Whitaker's voice cut through his thoughts, brisk as ever. She hugged her jacket closer, notebook peeking from her pocket, though she hadn't dared take it out since they arrived. William glanced at her, half a smile pulling at his mouth. "Brooding is my process. Ask Alvarez. He's seen me perfect it." Detective Alvarez, standing a few feet away with arms crossed, gave a grunt that was half a laugh, half annoyance. "If brooding solves crimes, you'll have cleared the whole city by morning." William ignored him. His eyes swept the pier, the ferry terminal's glass walls, the slick wood of the pier planks, the glittering teeth of the river beyond. Too perfect, too curated. He crouched suddenly, studying a shard of glass embedded between two boards, gleaming like a dropped gemstone. He didn't touch it. Instead, he traced the air above it with his finger. "A trail," he murmured. "Breadcrumbs. He wants us to follow." Alvarez bristled. "You're saying he planted evidence to lead us right where he wants? That's not breadcrumbs. That's a damn mousetrap." "Exactly," William said, standing. His eyes sparked with something between admiration and fury. "And the mouse always thinks he's clever enough to snatch the cheese." Lauren stepped closer, lowering her voice. "And are you?" William didn't answer. He didn't need to. They followed the glass. Shards embedded in wood, tucked into crevices, laid out so that once you saw the pattern you couldn't unsee it. A mosaic leading them deeper along the pier, toward the empty terminal at the far end. The officers fanned out, sweeping flashlights across benches and stairwells, but William was ahead of them, drawn like a moth. The glass shards grew larger, more deliberate. A pane leaned against the terminal wall, etched with symbols like a language of fractures. Lauren shivered as the beam of her phone light caught the surface. It looked like a fractured mirror, one that reflected them in broken pieces. Alvarez muttered, "This is sick, like he wants us to see ourselves in the wreckage." William's voice was quiet, almost reverent. "That's exactly the point." Inside, the terminal was dim, the overhead lights flickering faintly. Ferry schedules scrolled pointlessly on digital screens, empty promises of crossings that would never come tonight. The air smelled faintly metallic, like wet steel and salt. And then came the voice. Smooth, distorted, echoing across hidden speakers. "William Cross, you finally made it." The floodlights inside snapped on all at once, blinding for a moment. When William's vision adjusted, he saw what waited. Rows of mirrors propped along the walls, angled to catch their reflections from every possible direction. In the center of the space stood a single chair, empty, its seat glittering with a scattering of glass dust. Lauren's hand tightened into a fist. "He's not here." William tilted his head. "On the contrary, he's everywhere." The voice chuckled, layered and metallic. "Clever, as always. But cleverness only carries you so far. Tonight, you'll see how fragile your city is, how fragile you are." There was a low mechanical hum. William spun, spotting faint red lights winking along the support beams. His stomach dropped. "Bombs," he said flatly. The room came alive. Hidden panels slid open, revealing glass cylinders wired with explosives. Each one was filled with shards suspended in liquid, ready to turn the entire terminal into a hurricane of razors. A masterwork of cruelty. Explosion and shrapnel fused into art. "Bomb squad!" Alvarez barked, reaching for his radio. But the speakers hissed again. "Don't bother. Try tampering with them and they'll detonate. Consider this a riddle, Cross. Solve it and you walk away. Fail and you'll be scattered like the rest." William's mind raced. The mirrors, the symbols etched on glass, the chair at the center. Nothing here was decoration. The glassmaker never wasted a detail. He strode to the chair, ignoring Alvarez's curse behind him, and bent to study the glittering dust. Not dust, tiny fragments arranged like clock hands. Midnight. He looked up sharply at the largest mirror. Etched across its fractured surface was the outline of the city skyline, but one building was cracked, jagged, not random. Pier 11 itself. He felt the weight of it then. The entire structure was the message. Lauren stepped closer. "William, talk to me. What do you see?" He whispered. "He wants me to sit. The chair. It's the key." "Or the trigger," Alvarez snapped. William ignored him and lowered himself into the chair. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then the mirrors shifted, mechanical arms tilting them one by one, until their fractured reflections all converged on him. The bomb's timer displays flickered to life, glowing in their mirrored surfaces. 0 hours, 10 minutes, and 0 seconds. Lauren gasped. Alvarez swore. The distorted voice purred. 10 minutes, William. Save yourself, save your friends. Or prove that glass always cuts deeper than wit." The next minutes blurred into a frenzy of deduction. William's eyes darted between mirrors, tracing angles, reading the symbols. Each bomb's timer was a reflection, not the true display. Some ticked faster, some slower, a puzzle of perspectives. He shouted instructions, sharp and fast. Alvarez, find the beams with dual reflections. Those are real. Cut the power lines feeding from the west wall, not the east. Lauren, mark every mirror with a skyline etching. They're decoys. She moved without hesitation, chalking mirrors with quick, shaky strokes, her breath fogging the glass. Alvarez cursed under his breath but obeyed, ripping panels open, sweat dripping as he pulled wires with trembling fingers. The countdown plunged lower. 3 o'clock. 2 o'clock. William was at the last mirror, hands flying as he rearranged etched shards into alignment. It was like tuning an instrument. The skyline fractured, then clicked into place. And suddenly, the reflections synced. All the timers reset at once. 1 o'clock. Now, he barked. Kill the main. Alvarez yanked the master line. Sparks showered, lights flickered. Then the timers froze. 0:59. Silence. Lauren collapsed against a wall, laughing breathlessly, the sound edged with hysteria. Alvarez sagged beside her, muttering prayers in Spanish. William sat motionless in the chair, heart hammering. He wasn't triumphant, not yet. Because the voice came again, calm, amused. Well done, William. You really do perform under pressure. William's head snapped up. In one of the mirrors, a figure stood, just a silhouette, blurred and obscured. A man in a dark coat, face hidden, but unmistakably real. Watching. Lauren whispered, "Is that—" "Yes," William said. His voice was like iron. "The Glassmaker." The figure leaned closer to the glass. Though his features were distorted, William swore he felt the weight of his gaze, sharp as broken edges. "You've been chasing reflections," the voice said softly. "But you've never looked into your own. We've met before, William. You just don't remember." The mirror cracked suddenly, a jagged line splitting the figure in two. Then the speakers cut to static. By the time Alvarez and his men stormed the back halls, the Glassmaker was gone. No trace, just silence, and shards glittering on the floor like fallen stars. Later, outside on the pier, dawn just beginning to pale the horizon, Lauren found William leaning against the railing, staring at the city. "You saved everyone in there," she said quietly. He shook his head. "No, I played his game, and he let me win." Lauren frowned. "Why?" William's jaw tightened. "Because this isn't over. Tonight was just a rehearsal." He turned, eyes dark, reflecting the city lights. "The Glassmaker doesn't just want to kill me, Lauren. He wants to break me." And behind them, as the river carried the first light of morning, a shard of etched glass gleamed on the pier, left deliberately. A final calling card.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, stay safe.